Hi everyone, I'm the Rum.
And I'm the Wine.
We're an expat couple from Barbados and Austria, living here now in Dublin, Ireland. We came about 3 years ago and we make YouTube videos twice a week to help people who are thinking about moving to Ireland see exactly what life here is like. And for those who've already come here and are starting to settle in, just some more information so you can really live, settle in and
thrive. I can't say it any differently. It's really hard to say for German speakers. It's such a stupid word.
If you want to subscribe, please do, and we'll start today's video.
So in today's video we are going to compare Dublin versus London. It's a question people ask every now and then. Also, some people might assume London and Dublin is basically the same. It's not. Can watch this and other mistakes not to make as an expat in Dublin in a video that I will link down to in the description below. But the reason we're also going to talk about London versus Dublin is because we've lived in both cities. London is actually the place where we met because we both studied at the same university there.
Kingston Uni!
Yay! So we did spend 1 year in London and we seriously looked at staying in London, but then, well, Brexit and all of that things happened and we were like, maybe not, maybe let's consider other options, and we're glad because that's how we ended up in Dublin. So point number one to compare, which I think is the biggest criticism for either city that gets thrown around a lot, is the housing, and indeed the housing is
Not so good.
really expensive in both places. Let's just be upfront, clear about that. It's like, it's really expensive either place you go. Like, London is notoriously expensive for, even if you live on the outskirts, just for a flat or even a one-bedroom place. But at the same time in Dublin we have a housing crisis here, so like you don't even want to look at the averages. It's like the Dublin city centre average for a flat is around €2,000. Like in London it's like, if you try and calculate euro versus pound, it comes up to about the same. One thing that you do have in London that luckily they haven't introduced in Ireland is there's a council tax. So depending what area in London you live in, this may be a lot more expensive or not that bad. In the area we wanted to stay in, because we loved Kingston so much and we wanted to stay close to the university area and all our friends there, council tax is huge because it's like a posher suburb of London. You're right by the Thames, you have all the royal parks, and you find as a university student where you don't pay the council tax. But once you have a job and you have to, makes rent a lot less affordable than it already was before. So those are actually kind of similarities for the cities in terms of the cost of living, but there are also some similarities about the houses. And now, don't hate on me, I know this is what any Austrian or probably also German and Dutch or Nordic person will complain about, but it's the windows. Double glazed windows are really hard to come by in either city. There tends to be a general draft and sometimes mold situation in a lot of places that, if you come from other places where this is not a thing, is very confusing and sometimes a little disturbing. In our defense, like in Austria, it gets so cold during the winter months, like you can easily have minus 10 degrees and more, that if you didn't insulate your house very well, you gotta be really, really badly freezing and spending so much money on heating. So insulation is a huge thing that I took for granted moving abroad. Found out it's not the same case. It doesn't get to minus 10 in London or in Dublin, so you are fine hovering around the 0-ish degrees, but it's still something that took a lot of getting used to for me personally.
Of course, the Wine being from Austria, they really care about these double glazed windows. Another thing that she would also get really passionate about would be transport. So I'm going to take this one. It may be a bit shorter in words, but in a nutshell, London is a much bigger city than Dublin, and of course it's a way more extensive travel network. I remember the first time, well actually when we studied, it was my second time in London, I really got a high off of like jumping off from tube to tube, and it was kind of cool for like the first, 8 months. By the end of it I was just like, I'm sick of this rushing around. But the good thing is that it really connects you, the entire city together. I remember that we went out one time and we even caught a ferry. Because, part of the transport system includes a ferry from one side of the Thames to the other. Was it somewhere the South Bank, North Bank?
We went to Greenwich.
Yeah, for you those that know the definite map layout, you'll understand that I'm horrible at maps. Which is why Dublin and its smaller size is a bit easier for me to understand. There's not the huge transport network. There's no metro. One day there might be, but it is not this. Not today. May not be this decade. That's another topic altogether. But because of that, Dublin has main transport system is tram called Lewis and kind of like a dark train system network that's a bit more up and down the coast. But otherwise, you're walking, cycling, or going by bus. Because of this, the small size, Dublin is a lot more of a walkable city. We like walking or, if we were into it, cycling. It's, for those environmentally friendly people out there, it's a lot more of a small city landscape. You can pop there and not be too much of a worry. In the UK, London especially, you cannot be walking by foot. Yes. I tried to, but...
I tried to make him and some other friends. I was like, oh, we're just by Waterloo. Let's just walk to Tower Bridge. It's just a short walk along the South Bank. 40 minutes later.
It's like, hi, my feet hurt. That wasn't my words especially, but I remember there being a distinct thing of somebody asking, where's the next tube station to be finished with this epic journey of a walk we were on.
So the next point on the list are the spare time activities. London obviously is a massive city, has lots of famous theatres, museums, all these kind of things. When there's a band on tour, they'll usually stop in London. So there are a lot of things to do. You get to see a lot of well-known artists if you have the money to go to these concerts, but there are also a lot of amazing museums that are for free that usually switch out exhibitions, so there's always something new to see. And of course, my personal favourite, the theatre. A £5 ticket to see a play at the Globe, or £10 tickets usually, like in the National Theatre, to see a show, even if you're at the back. Like, there's a lot of amazing stuff to see, and if you care about actors, you probably even see some famous actors in those too. Now with Dublin on the other hand, it's a much smaller city, so a lot of the time artists may not come to Dublin itself, or when they do, like Ed Sheeran, it's like a huge thing where suddenly the entire city is booked out and it feels like that was the only thing that happened the entire weekend here.
Yeah, now that the summer's coming along, the big acts are actually coming, including like My Chemical Romance is like actually coming. I don't know if I'm going to the show, but it's, for me, in the Caribbean, you don't get as much. You like, no big acts are going to be like, I'm going to stop in Barbados. Except Rihanna, she did that once for the whole country, but that was only once after all these years. So the kind of nightlife in Dublin, even if they're like small indie players and artists, it's still great. I kind of like that indie feel that you get. If London has all the big expansive shows, you get like a real cultural, more indie type feeling.
That's absolutely the thing. Like, they're really trying to help out indie artists to have a lot of pubs, which maybe have an upstairs area where they put on shows or stand-up comedies, things like that, discussions. So there's always something to check out, new plays, like experimental plays, different theatre festivals, and that's what we love about Dublin, that it's not too expensive either if you want to go see a show, because usually it's small productions, but there's also a different vibe to the smaller productions versus sitting in a massive famous theatre like the National Theatre in London.
And of course, if theatres aren't your thing, there's a pub. Lots of pubs all over the place. Get well acquainted. Yeah, I think the pub culture, yeah, it's in the UK too, but there's just something classic and almost traditional about a good Irish pub. Come here and you'll see there's definitely this je ne sais quoi, if you may say. That's me butchering French, so we don't worry about that. As we've talked about in some other videos, Dublin is more or less almost like the European headquarters for a ton of companies. You've got your Facebooks, you've got your Amazon building a building just out there yonder. you know, Google's buying stuff, building stuff all over the place. If you didn't know it, you'd think you'd stepped into a mini, colder and wetter Silicon Valley. Of course, London is like that as well. So many different startups and companies all trying to be innovative. Personally, I think that if you're in the certain, what do you call those things? Sectors, job sectors, industries, that the appeal of Dublin is definitely like if you really want to work at your Facebook, your Amazon, your Google, especially. Without traveling all the way to LA, this is really a kind of like a hub, a great spot for that. And as well for startups. I feel like if you're into more innovative type of startup or that type of feel, then probably London is more of that type of city. Both of them, I think, really have a lot of opportunities in the financial sector, UK especially, known for that. And of course Dublin, there are banks all over the place, so almost everyone at my workplace at some point had a banking job or the other.
So if I had to divide Dublin and London by job sectors, I'd say Dublin has more of the bit techie, marketing, also sales, anything that would be needed to support those European and sometimes even Middle Eastern and African headquarters here in Dublin. Versus London seems a bit more the traditional, you know, jobs that draw expats in, like the finance stuff, the business consultant, business analyst stuff for the big consulting companies, those kind of things. But of course there are startup scenes in both places. We both work at startups here in Dublin. But if we have to be fully honest, probably London is more known for startups and probably simply because of its size has more of them.
Now for the vibes, one of my favourite topics. We all know London, big metropolitan city, people from all over the world. Yeah, including people from the Caribbean. What I like about London is that you've got this melting pot of all these people together from, you know, to be honest, you have the colonial past and all that stuff. So basically you've got people from all around the world joining in this country. What I really like is when we were studying there is that you could go get food from almost any place in the world. It's not like one shop that's pretending that they're selling Jamaican food. It's like you've got several like authentic Jamaican food, Caribbean food, you know, Persian food, any sort of thing you had on the menu. And that's the one thing I really like. Dublin, not quite like that. It's got its own vibe. It's like you come here for that authentic Irish experience, but on some of those nights where you're kind of like, you know, I could really use some, I feel like some Caribbean food. Yeah, there's not that much selection because unless your city is a big metropolis, you don't have all the different people groups who would have migrated and stayed and probably brought along some food and, you know, their recipes and have their restaurants. So that part of the vibe, culinary part, yeah, you've got to hand it to London for that. Dublin, it's a different experience. It's authentic and the food tastes good. Basically, you can't get fresher Irish-inspired food than Ireland. I know, mind-blowing, but if that's what you want, it's the correct place for that.
So one thing I particularly noticed about moving to London, coming from a small village myself personally, is it feels like a massive city. And I know there's going to be someone watching it as maybe in Tokyo and being like, oh, you're talking about London is tiny in comparison. But to me, it felt like a massive city with so many people there and so much going on and everyone being super busy all the time. And it was fun for a while, but Dublin is kind of it's more laid back. It has a bit of a smaller town feeling. Obviously, it is much smaller than London. It has about 1.3 million inhabitants, which puts it around the same size and perhaps even a little similar feel to Vienna, where I studied before. So I think that's maybe one of the main reasons we in the end also choose Dublin over London. It's just the almost small town vibes. You have these little neighbourhoods in Dublin that almost feel like villages and you just kind of feel at home. Like you could be walking down any street and you'll run into someone you know, even though you live in a big city that's still very international as well.
Yeah, that's her. I basically wanted something that was closer to the beach.
So if you've lived in both cities as well, let us know which one you prefer and for what reason. And if you like videos with us talking about Ireland and what it's like to be expats, make sure to subscribe. We do videos twice a week. Until then, see you next week. Bye!
Yep, bis später.